Hello, everyone, and welcome to Real Watchers Movie Club. My name is Garrett,
And I'm Kevin.
and we are your hosts. And Movie Club is the show where we pick a movie every week and discuss it just like a book club. On today's show, we are covering the period drama piece that is There Will Be Blood. Our thoughts and more coming up on Movie Club. Released in 2007, There Will Be Blood was directed by Paul Thomas Anderson and stars Daniel Day-Lewis, Paul Dano, and Kevin J. O'Connor. A story of family, religion, hatred, oil, and madness, focusing on a turn-of-the-century prospector in the early days of the business. It is currently ranked 140 on IMDb's Top 250, and currently has a 4.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd, and is ranked number 26 on its Top 250. It won 2 Oscars for Best Cinematography and Best Actor for Daniel Day-Lewis. It was nominated for 6 more, including Best Sound Editing, Best Art Direction, Best Film Editing, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Director, and Best Picture. Alrighty, Kevin, so this one was my pick this week, and after having just done the Star Wars trilogy, which was your suggestion for us to watch, I guess it's only fair to talk about why I picked There Will Be Blood, and quite honestly, I had never actually seen it. I had heard so much about it, obviously the fact that it's on both the IMDb and Letterboxd Top 250, and ranked so highly in the Letterboxd Top 250, it is talked about a lot when it comes to film circles, and I feel like it's referenced a lot and talked about a lot. And so I really feel like it was time to give it a shot for both of us. And I'm guessing that this is the first time you've seen it as well. Had you heard of the movie before? Obviously, I'm sure you've heard some of the quotes somewhere, but
I don't think I have actually heard any of the quotes or anything like that. So, no, never heard of it. Maybe I heard like the title of it, but never really looked into it. So I just wanted to get into it and see what it was. So.
Sure. You'd never heard like the whole like I drink your milkshake like that, like I drink it up. Oh,
No.
Interesting. All right. Let's go ahead and get into talking a little bit about this movie, because this is a dense movie. I don't feel like there's anything wrong in saying that. And I only feel like it's fair to talk about that part of it first. The movie is a little bit of a slog.
It very much is. It's you feel that 2 hours and 30 minutes, I feel like.
I feel like to make light of it, it's almost like the studio came to Paul Thomas Anderson and was like, hey, so are you ready to get there and do some cuts on your movie? And he's like, what are you talking about? It's already in theaters. And they're just like, what?
That's literally there could have been some like tiny cuts in there, and it would have made it pace a lot better. But yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. It's like, no, it's already out. You guys missed it.
We already got these Oscar nominations, so the studio's like, what? It's been 10 minutes.
This movie's been out for 2 years. Why are you guys did you not get the email?
I feel like, it's kind of funny because this is a 2.5 hour movie, and it does feel like its length. I think they probably could have cut it down to 2:15, maybe 2:10. But I will say that, like, anytime Daniel Day-Lewis is on the screen as Daniel Plainview, it's just like you're fixated. Like he commands your attention in this movie. As does, I would say, Paul Dano. I think Paul Dano, who plays Paul and Eli, the priest, is fantastic in this movie as well. I think both of them turn in some incredible performances. Daniel Day-Lewis deserving of at least the nomination for Best Actor. I don't remember who else was nominated that year, but a very, very well done performance. But like, again, it's just like, it's a little bit of a slog. And when they're not on screen, when the movie is taking its time, it's a little too slow.
Yeah, I feel like they needed to put the son in there a little bit more and give him more of a role in this, because he was basically his right hand man, as he said throughout the whole movie. but you never get to see the kid half the time doing what kids do
So
on
there is a point to
stuff.
that, and which is actually interesting because I remember I stopped watching this movie and I was like, and I sat for a moment and I had watched someone's YouTube video. I don't remember who it was, unfortunately, but they did an analysis of the themes of this movie, and
Hmm.
it was when a lot of things clicked for me. And so this is one of the movies I feel like I do want to rewatch just because I feel like I missed a couple of things
Okay.
on the initial thing. But everything with the son, as I'm sure you know, towards the end of the movie, it's
Hmm.
not his real son.
Yeah, but still, why would I know he says like, "Oh, I just needed a baby face to love," or some quote like that at the end. But it's still like I would want to see more with the son, especially when he. Spoiler alert! I know we already said it, but loses his hearing, and he doesn't give two shits about the son. But he's the one that son made him the most money.
Yeah, which is the entire point. He's
Yeah,
just a means for Daniel to get what he wants. Like
yeah.
he's just to save face. It's
Hmm.
literally a part of the act that this con man is putting on. This is a movie about a villain. If you
Yeah,
haven't noticed, like
yeah.
this movie is not about a good man, and in fact, like no one in this movie really is good. Not even Paul Dano, the priest. Like no one in this
Mm-mm.
movie is good, which is really kind of fitting because the movie's about American capitalism.
Yeah.
But like he uses his son to get in with the locals, and
Hmm.
like if you kind of go back and watch it, as soon as what happens with his son, he's worried. He takes his son back to the mess hall, puts him on the table, and then notices like when it catches fire or whatever, which is a
Yeah.
beautiful scene. I know
I
you called that
love
out in
that.
your review.
Yeah, that was
um,
so awesome to see.
Gorgeously shot,
Hmm.
but that's when he realizes like I don't need him anymore. I'm rich. Like it's just that light switch that just snaps in the back of his head, and that's
Yeah,
why you don't see him as much after that point. Like, I mean, granted, from what you're saying, maybe it's in the beginning of the movie too, where you don't see HW,
mm,
which there is a reason why his name is HW.
I never, I never got to that. So why is it called
So
HW?
they don't say it in the movie. I learned this through a YouTube essay I was watching afterward. It's short for human worker.
Oh gosh,
That's
that's horrible.
that's the canon, I guess you could say, or like the story reason for his name being HW is because it's short for human worker. Like it's literally, I don't know if it's like, it's never, because again, it's never mentioned in the movie, and I don't know where that comes from, if it's like the original thing that this is based off of, because it did say that this was an adapted screenplay. So I do want to figure out what it was based off of. But like, again, he's just using him. Like
Yeah,
it's absolutely nuts. Uh,
but I back
okay.
to
Sorry, the movie is based on a book called Oil, a 1927 novel by Upton Sinclair. So
okay.
yeah,
But I did want to get back to that point where the two main characters, if they're not on the screen, I didn't give a crap about the movie. Like
interesting.
I I get there were some really good shots in this movie. The cinematography was very pleasant to see. But if it wasn't them two on the screen, it didn't pique my interest. Like when he goes out and puts the stakes in the ground to mark the land or to mark the piping where it's going to be, that was like 10 minutes long to me. And I was like, what? Like, I get it. He's marking where he wants to go. Oh, no, it's like 7 stakes you have to see get put into the ground. And then the turn when he's doing the stakes with, I don't even know his friend's name. That's how much I remember of every other people on this cast.
So
What's
that
the
wasn't
guy?
his friend; it was his brother.
I didn't even know that was his brother throughout the whole movie. So,
That's a major part of the movie. Like,
okay.
yeah, so it's his brother. His name is.
It's
Oh man,
his
where'd he go?
father dies. That's how I remember. He's like, yeah, or someone dies. And then the main character has no remorse over that.
It is. Sorry, I was trying to
You're good.
see where this is. Oh my gosh, this is gonna drive me nuts. Henry? Yeah, his name's Henry. But he's like, so when he comes into the picture, it's immediately off-putting, and you see Daniel kind of freak out about it, like, who are you? Do you have identification or whatever? And then he's like, oh shit, you're my long-lost brother. All right, cool. And he's a scam artist. Like what's interesting is that the reasoning for why he's doing it isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? He really did have a brother who passed away, and this guy was his brother's like best friend or something like that, and was like, okay, well, I need to go and find his brother, and you know, that's a blood relation that Daniel thinks he has. You know, his son is not a blood relation.
Yeah.
And, you know, eventually when he starts spending more time with Henry than he does his own son, his son tries to kill Henry with the fire in the house.
Yeah.
And that's when Henry HW gets sent off to, you know, behavioral school. But but then we find out later that Henry is not his brother. And like we find that out, but Daniel finds that out when they're at the beach. And that's the moment. That moment is haunting to me, where they're sitting on the beach, and it's like Daniel realizes it, and he's like, and he just goes out to the water, and then like that last shot of him sitting in the ocean water, looking back at the camera, like looking at Henry, is really creepy and really cements that he's a villain. And then he just goes out and kills him, like, which at first I didn't think he did. I thought he just like put the gun next to the back of his head and fired. No, it was just the back of his head.
Yeah.
And then buries him. It's honestly, it's one of those things where like people who are in that much power and that much wealth in the American capitalist system think that they are, you know,
they're the law,
immortal, like that they don't like consequences don't apply to them.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely, you know, it's a fascinating thing. I would say that this movie gets way more fascinating after the oil fire and HW loses his hearing. I think the last half of this movie is where it really picks up pace, and I think a lot of the pacing from the beginning hour, I would say, could be taken out of this, could be kind of edited down or taken out. Even though it does feature some great performances and some wonderful cinematography, and it's made very, very well, everything important happens in the last hour, 45 minutes of this movie. Like, and that's where this movie really shines. And I do want to talk about the ending between Paul Dano and Daniel Day-Lewis in his bowling alley.
So good.
So good. And I'm so angry that I had watched this after making the top 10 villains video, because Daniel Plainview would have been in the realistic villain category for sure. Not the winner maybe, but like in the mentions or whatever, because like he is horrifying in this movie at points, even though he does treat, you know, people very well, and also the way that some of those people, like the workplace accidents, are hard to watch in this movie.
But it's something that would happen, so it had to be period time or realistic. So I like how they put those deaths in there, because some people, like when he's when they go to the hill oil, when everything starts to happen, when the guy dies and he goes, who is it? Did I know him? No. Okay. Like, it was like that person that died was just another guy he didn't care about.
There's a number. Yeah. Which again, like, I do want to check out this Upton Sinclair, because I mean, for anyone who out there in the American school system, high school, college, I'm sure most of us have read, I think it's Concrete Jungle, which is about, like, you know, meat packing facilities in the Great Depression era. And so it's all very, you know, on point for Upton Sinclair. So I'd be really interested to see what the original book has to say, which apparently they did change the name of this because it's not supposed to be a true adaptation of the book.
of the book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like the director actually says there's not enough in the movie to justify it being a adaptation, like a
Okay.
full version of it.
Hmm.
Which I think is fascinating that they would even, admit that. I think that's really
Hmm.
cool. But yeah, so I do want to dig a little because your review was a little bit more on the negative side for this movie. So, like, I mean,
Yes.
besides obviously the length and kind of not really caring about the movie when the characters were on screen, what else didn't necessarily work for you?
It's
Unless it's mostly
what
those.
it's mostly those, but it's like I don't know. The kid never talked as much as I wanted him to. There was no interactions with the community except for at the church, but because no one cared about the guy dying, we never saw like a funeral for him or anybody remorsing his passing. Um, I don't know. Maybe I wanted to see this movie more as like a community movie, not just based on the villain movie. Um, but I understand why they took that route because he's great in this movie. But maybe I wanted to see more consequences from him for his actions and for what he did.
Yeah, which I mean is a longing feeling that most of us feel for a
Hmm.
lot of these rich people in the world who don't get any consequences.
Hmm.
Like in many ways, I think that kind of reaction is normal and I think
Yeah.
expected. And I think that's actually a good feeling that you're getting, right? Because again, it's about a bad guy.
Hmm.
It's just not a good guy that we're following for this entire movie. You
Hmm.
know, we're not really following anyone good in this whole movie. So
And maybe another thing is too the period that it was taking place in, like 1911. I think it starts off out right.
I think it originally starts in 1904, I believe, when he
Hmm.
first finds that hole and when he falls down the hole and
Yeah,
has his
yeah, yeah, yeah,
accident.
yeah. Hmm.
I believe that's in 1904. So it's probably around 1911, 1912, maybe before World War One.
See, maybe that's just not like a year the years for me to watch a movie because maybe before that would be perfectly fine, like in
Hmm.
the 1800s, and maybe after that. But this one was just like there was nothing going on that piqued my interest when watching it.
Yeah, it's almost like it's not quite the West, like the Wild
Hmm.
West, but it's not like also that exciting of a time period.
Yeah.
I can definitely understand that. I mean, I don't think we get enough movies that are not in that kind of time period. Like we get a lot of World War II, we get a lot of World War One, we get a lot of Wild West movies. We don't get a lot of things that were like before World War One and after the West. So I think it is kind
Hmm.
of nice to get something like that. We did also see that with what other movie recently? Oh my gosh. Killers of the Flower Moon was also in a similar
See, but
era.
that one I think piqued my interest more because it's about the community around it. Maybe there's more
Sure,
people being involved in it.
I can understand that. Yeah, I
Hmm.
think I get it. Um, I don't necessarily. Hmm. I don't know. I feel like it is a time period we just don't get enough of, and like I'm not gonna say I love the time period. Don't get me
Hmm.
wrong, but I'm
Hmm.
saying like it's refreshing that we got it. Like
And see, like you're saying, maybe, but I don't have enough experience in that time frame for movies that have come out yet. Maybe this is my first 1907 time period movie, but if I watch more, maybe that'll entice me to maybe rewatch this one again and look at it through maybe more open eyes.
for sure, and I think like I said, I do want to go back and rewatch this movie, especially with some of the ideas of the themes in mind. Obviously, you have the capitalism motif. This is an American capitalist during like the
Hmm.
height of the American dream, kind of a thing.
Hmm.
You could see this as a deconstruction of the American dream in many ways and how it works for some and doesn't work for others, or how the
Yeah.
American dream is a lie. But also, like, there are plentiful themes about religion in this movie,
Hmm.
and and rebirth and sin and all that kind of kind of thrown in there. There's a lot of different ways where you could see Daniel as the devil and the priest as the devil, like on Daniel's shoulder. There's a lot of different ways you can look into this movie, and I think everyone will come out of this movie feeling something different.
Yeah.
And one of the words I keep seeing getting thrown around about this movie is that it is like an American epic. We never really get a Lord of the Rings style film. I would say probably the only American epic that I can think of is like The Godfather, which we haven't watched yet. We will watch that soon. But like this could be kind of that, like it is a little bit of historical, but it's not like a historical piece. This isn't like an accurate film. This has elements of myth in it, right? Like the American dream and the pursuit of wealth and happiness and all that kind of stuff. Like, so in many ways, I can see how people would consider this to be like an American epic in the kin of something like Lord of the Rings. I don't think that at all. Like Lord of the Rings is epic because of its scale and its scope and its storytelling, whereas this is much more personal and is much more of like an introspective epic as opposed to like
it's more
scale epic.
More grounded epic, maybe.
Sure.
Like, no pun intended, because oil's in the ground, but yeah, I feel like this is back in that day. This is how you got rich. Like I don't know, like like this movie doesn't make me want to rewatch it again, because every time I talk about it, I'm like, okay, it's all they're doing is looking for oil. This is an oil movie.
Sure. Yeah, well, it's based on a book called Oil.
Oil, yeah.
So, I get it. I think it is. It's definitely an important part of history, and an important part in America's history. But also, I think it is a really well done cautionary tale about the kind of the extremes of capitalism, which I find truly fascinating. So,
true.
Alrighty, Kevin, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. I picked the movie this week, so we'll go ahead and let you go first with your score and what you thought.
Yeah, because we'll keep the positivity up with your score. So I gave this movie 2.5 stars out of 5, and I gave it a 50 out of 100. We were talking a little bit in the break time. This movie isn't for me, and that's okay. But I can understand why a lot of people like this movie and see its the actors in this movie. The two main actors are fantastic. The cinematography is great, but it didn't tickle my funny bone.
Yeah, fair enough. It's a movie that you can kind of respect everything about, but it just isn't something for you. Exactly. Totally get that. I've had movies like that before. For me, I did end up giving the movie 4 stars out of 5, which equates to an 89 out of 100. I thought that the film was successful due to its cast, with Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Dano being incredible in this film. And then giving obviously the deeper levels of meaning for however you look into it. Incredible music, incredible cinematography. But I do think that this movie is the epitome of a slow burn, and doesn't really get truly fantastic until its last hour and a half. But the first hour is still full of some good stuff, some great performances. I mean, it's not enough to make me hate the movie by any means necessary. And actually, kind of now that I have finished, I want to go back and watch it again and try and see what I had maybe missed the first time around, or kind of pick up a little bit more on what it's trying to say, maybe from the things that I had missed in kind of dialogue or practice on the first viewing. So the question now falls to you. What do you think of There Will Be Blood? We'd actually be very excited to hear what you have to say in the comments. Go ahead and leave those in the comment section down below. But remember, we will be watching, so be respectful of one another. Next week, the tone of our films continues to go down, as we'll be looking at the Holocaust film Schindler's List, which is actually a special request from Kevin that we finally watched this movie because of a recent film that we had watched. We'll talk a little bit more about that next week, but make sure to watch Schindler's List before next week to make sure you're not spoiled, because there's a lot in that movie. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to us here on YouTube, and follow us everywhere on social media at Reel Watchers. That is REEL Watchers, pretty much everywhere. And until then, make sure to keep your eyes on the screen.